recommendations about how to approach the U.S. market and growing in the U.S. And this can apply to both selling in higher ed, to selling in primary and secondary, or as we call it, K through 12. Let's say you're in a position that you can do the first. Establish an office in the US, you can market your services, your products directly, do it. The reason why I say that is because again, the US market, you need to be that partner, that company that can be there with the school to hold their hand in the initial stages, but then be there to answer any questions that they're going to have going forward, because you want to be able to cultivate the relationships, you want to be able to further develop the relationships. So if you can establish an office in the States, I highly suggest you should explore that option, because it would make a lot of sense to be able to have your team dedicated to the US working on a regular basis around getting sales and generating business in different parts of the country. Let's say setting up an office in the States is not a viable option for you. If you can, having a staff member based here that their primary focus is the US market. Someone that's able to come over for a couple of trade shows, someone that's able to monitor what's going on with the different associations, someone that's able to read the different newsletters, the different publications that come out around the education market, because what you'll find is companies that are established in the US have a hard time keeping track of what's going on in the US. So obviously, from the perspective of being a UK company, it's not easy to know what's going on in a country across the pond, as we say. So having someone that at least can keep on track of what's going on in the States, keep on track of the relationship that you have with clients, that's, I think, very important and very relevant to you. But subsequently, looking at it also from the perspective of, oftentimes, when you're dealing with the US, the least in terms of time difference that you're going to have between clients that you're going to have in the States and here is 5 hours. So you've got to figure, if you're working with any schools on the West Coast, it's an 8-hour time difference. So their day is beginning basically when the day shuts down here. With that time difference between the US, the UK, you want someone that maybe they're working off hours, maybe they're working at different times, so they can pay attention to what's going on. So you're not losing out on things, because again, like I said, when schools want you as a partner and want to feel like you're helping them solve a problem or providing them with something that gives them an additional tool, they don't want to be in a situation where when they need to ask you a question, they can't get to you. That can make or break companies. Let's say that the first two options are not viable. Work with us. I say software reseller, and that's actually should be more of a broader topic in terms of not necessarily a software reseller, maybe a distributor, depends obviously on what kind of product or service you're providing, but working with some kind of reseller within the US that's got the feet on the ground, they've got the relationships with the schools, but be careful and be mindful of what that reseller is and what they do. Because the one thing that you'll find in the US, that word reseller, I feel like it has a little bit of a different meaning in the US than it does in the UK. And what I mean by that, and some companies here in the UK will even have that same approach, but many resellers in the US are, we love your product, it's great, we're going to put it on their website, and they step away. And they wait for you to generate the traffic to their website to buy the product, and then you're both getting money off of that. Others are going to say, all right, we have sales team that go into the schools. But the problem is they walk into the schools with their sales team with a catalog, drop it on the table from some administrator, and wait for that administrator to pick out whatever products that they want. And if you're not on the cover or not in one of the prime pages or prime positioning within that catalog, you're lost. So you need to be mindful of the reseller, what they do. For some companies, to be honest, even that approach of just being in the catalog, they're happy with that because they'd say, all right, you know what, we have a presence in the US in some kind of way. Now somebody knows about us and somebody will find us, and we're happy if we get a little bit of business. But I know many UK companies don't want that reseller that's just going to throw them into a catalog. They want someone that's actually going to take the time to get them further into the schools that's going to proactively market their product or their service. Partnering with an established US company. Now what I mean by that is if you have a product or service that can fit a niche of a company that's already established in the States, working with them and saying, okay, maybe it's a partnership, it's a reciprocal partnership, you're doing something for them here, they're doing something for you in the US. But working with them in a way that it's beneficial for both companies. If you're going to consider, any option that you're going to consider, I highly recommend you make sure you have an attorney that's familiar with US and UK laws, because Americans we're, so I hate to say it, we're a more litigious society. If you have a product or a service that we feel like it went wrong, I want my money back, I'm going to come after you for it. Making sure that you're in a position where you know what the laws are, what the rules are, to protect yourself going over to a market where you may be unaware of what some of the issues are or some of the loopholes, if you would. But then also to make sure that attorney is looking at the contract from the perspective of you're not being taken advantage of by that American company that's trying to work with you. But partnering, what's nice about partnering with a company is that they can subsequently work with you with that product or service. They might only have one or two other things that they work on, so bringing in and adding in your product as something that works well with what they're already offering, they're going to take the time, they're going to put the effort in, they're going to put the resource in to making sure that you're successful because they have more vested in your success. This is something universally, no matter what your approach is, I definitely highly recommend joining trade associations. Trade associations within the US, and there's a multitude depending on what it is that your product or your service covers. There's associations, obviously there's the associations of school board administrators, there's associations of principals, there's associations of teachers, there's associations of procurement officers, there's associations for special education teachers, there's associations around technology officers. Some of the big key ones we'll touch on in a couple minutes in one of the slides, but I think it's very relevant to just be able to join associations because it can provide you with the networking opportunities to be able to meet potential partners, be able to meet potential customers that you can work with within the US. Again, like I said, it's tricky to be over here trying to manage business over there. Trade shows, attending the relevant trade shows. And I just said attend as opposed to attend or exhibit. The reason why I just say attend is because I think initially, if you haven't been to any trade shows in the US, you want to attend just to feel it out. See what it's about, see if there's going to be something that's relevant to it, and then maybe in the future, going over. The one thing that I found is that there's no bet equivalent in the US. Which is surprising to some people because of the size of the US, but I think the size of the US works against us in the fact that logistically it's not as easy to get as many people in one location in the country. People from LA are not always going to come over to New York for something. So what happens is that we have a multitude of shows around the country that can be large national shows, which are still going to draw maybe 15, maybe 20,000 people, as opposed to you get like 30, 40, 50,000 that come to a bet. You're going to get the national shows that are going to have a nice draw and a nice crowd that are going to excite people, but it might be that from the US perspective, you might have 2 or 3 different shows or events that you're looking at going to because of the regional ones, the ones that focus on only New York or only the Northeast or only California or only the West Coast. So being aware of, okay, what is it that we do? What is the product that we're selling? Who is our target audience, and where are they going to be? Where do they go? Some of the associations, these are just kind of the big ones, if you would, or some of the more popular ones. Obviously, the American Association of School Administrators, that's kind of your high-end contacts, your principals, your school superintendents, etc. People at that level are typically part of that. The International Society for Technology Education, that's a major one that I think it's relevant to a lot of UK companies because of the fact that they're an association around companies like yourselves. Ed Tech, they're the ones that host the event that is the closest in size to the BET show. Their members are companies that potentially could be your resellers, your distributors, your partners, as well as obviously people within education that are decision makers. So I think ISTE is one that's definitely relevant for you in terms of being able to say, okay, let me take a look at what's going on, them keeping you aware of the trends that are going on with EdTech, the different opportunities that there might be with EdTech. ISTE is great for that. The National Education Association, now you're looking more in terms of getting information about schools and about education in the US. They have a great resource and database where you can get the data in terms of the gentlemen that were here earlier in terms of talking about attendance figures and things like that, where you could get data, general data around, okay, what are the attendance figures looking at? What are the population percentages in certain parts of the country, and subsequently what are the number of school students that are X age or whatever it might be. They have a lot of different resources around all different types of data like that, number of international learners, etc. National School Boards Association, again, a lot of their members may also be part of the American Association of School Administrators, but again, high-level decision makers of various districts around the country typically are going to be a part of maybe both those associations, but at least one of the two of those associations are going to have those kinds of individuals that are members. And what's relevant for you, again, as a company, is that these associations, they are going to be hosting different events that might be the ones that are going to get you in front of the different decision makers that you want to be able to speak to. And if you're trying to do things sell directly to schools from a remote position, being here in the UK, you're going to have to try to raise your profile as much as you possibly can amongst decision makers in schools. So targeting associations like the NSBA and the AASA would make a lot of sense for you because of the fact that you're going to get in front of some decision makers, be able to network with some decision makers, and develop those relationships that you're going to need to develop. Because one thing that you'll find with education in the States is that it does tend to be a who you know, buddy-buddy type of system in some parts of the country, especially areas like Texas. You really need to have feet on the ground that are developing the relationships with those districts there because of the fact that they tend, I don't want to use a term, but there's no other way of putting it. I don't know if you guys will know it, but it's what we call the good old boy network in the States, where my buddy, oh, you know what, he works for X company, I am a decision maker at a school, I'm going to give him the contract because I know him, I'm going to help him out. You see that a little bit more in certain parts of the country because they have those relationships, they've known each other 15, 20 years. They might get a contract or get in a position to get a contract that you might have a product that blows that product out of the water, but you don't even get the time of day from that school because you don't know that guy. He hasn't seen you before, he hasn't met you, your name is unusual to him or her, they're not going to give you the chance. So networking with the different associations can sometimes bridge that gap. And again, what's relevant, again, working with potential partners, is if you're working with a partner, they've got those relationships, and then you're basically benefiting off of the work and the relationships that they're having and they're building on a regular basis. So the trade shows, what's the closest, what can get you similar to what we have here at BET? CUE stands for Computer Using Educators. That's another great association that focuses on selling technology and using technology in the classroom at all levels. Their annual conference is one to look into. EdNet, now EdNet is a little bit different. EdNet is not a massive conference like this, it's much more networking. It's all about networking, breakout sessions, and talking about different trends within education. What's nice about EdNet is it's much more in terms of, if you're looking to find partners to work with, that's an area to go because of the fact that there's companies that are looking for other partners. They have great sessions in terms of when you first get there their first day, they basically say, go and do your 5-minute presentation of what you're looking for. And you have 5 minutes and they play that the first day and they have all these kinds of mixers and like I said, it's focusing on networking. But what's great about that, I've a couple of UK companies that have come over for it that have actually started developing some strong relationships with some high profile companies in the States from meeting with them at EdNet. So EdNet is one, it's not at a glamorous, this one coming up. It's in Baltimore in 2014, so it's not, unfortunately, it's not Orlando or Vegas or someplace fun, but it is one that, in terms of networking and being able to talk with other companies and kind of your peers, if you would, within the education space, it's really great. One thing that I've found from companies that have attended any event, for the most part, within the US education space, is that a lot of UK companies have talked about how friendly it is, which Americans being friendly is not our typical, we're not typically known for that, but how friendly people within the education space are in terms of talking about what's worked for them, helping companies to come over. I think, and that's generally the mindset of people that work within the education space typically is more helpful, is more about being more proactive and helping each other out. So you get some companies that come into it that are going to be attending these events that could be people that just the conversation you have and the resource that they can provide are great to you. They may not necessarily be a partner, but they could spend half an hour, 20 minutes talking to you and providing you with some information that can make or break your plans for coming over to the market. FETC, that's actually coming up in a few weeks. That's another training conference. Initially, it stood for the Florida Education Technology Conference. Now it's just FETC, as it's become more branded, if you would. A marketing company purchased it, and they've just decided to go with the initials instead. That's a little bit smaller than ISTE, which is the next one, but FETC is another one. It's education technology. That one every year is in Orlando, Florida, so it's somewhere in the wintertime, it's somewhere nice and warm and sunny to go to. So that's obviously attractive from that aspect. But again, I've gotten feedback from UK companies that have attended, that have had good shows, made excellent contacts from that. Excuse me. ISTE is another one that, again, ISTE is, now this year in 2014 will be in Atlanta, but it does move around every year. It's the closest in terms of size to a BET show. You're going to get a lot of the same players that are here, the international players that are here are going to be at ISTE as well. What you'll also find from ISTE is they have a lot of really good breakout sessions that might be relevant in terms from the UK company about finding out more about what's going on, what the trends are in the States. So ISTE is one that I highly recommend. And again, it's the annual conference held by the International Society for Technology and Education. South by Southwest EDU. Now, has anybody here heard of South by Southwest before? Okay. So South by Southwest typically is around the creative side, you know, music, movies, TV, fun. Well, education is fun, but music and TV and things like that, concerts, etc. But what's happened in recent years is they've expanded on to bring in an education element. And they've now got a few days at the beginning of the show in Austin, Texas, where it's a great, obviously, city for culture, etc. But every year now they're hosting education companies and building events with a little bit of an expo and a lot of sessions and a lot of talking about what's going on with education in the US. To be honest with you, it's a younger show, so I don't know as much about it, although in a few months I will be attending, so I'll have a better idea. So I'll have my contact details in a few minutes for everybody to take them down. So feel free in early April, after I've been over at South by Southwest, I'll be able to give you more specifics about what it's about and whether or not it's any good. But from what I've been hearing, it may become the new hot, trendy educational show in the US. Publications. Now, publications, I feel like this is the lifeblood for UK companies, especially, and not to knock any of these, but this EdSurge newsletter, it's a free newsletter, comes out, they send issues every Wednesday and Thursday. It was recommended to me by a US company that we met with, that we're working with, and it's a fantastic resource for different things that are going on within the education space around technology. That newsletter, like I said, every Wednesday and Thursday, I have two newsletters that they send out every week. It's good because of the fact that it's going to give you the ability to see what's going on, what are the trends, what's going to be relevant, because as we've talked about throughout the course of this presentation, from the UK perspective, you need to know what's going on in the US as best you possibly can. Anything free, I think, is worth signing up for. So the EdSurge newsletter is definitely something to look into, because it's a free resource that comes once a week that has a lot of different great information for you on there. eSchool News, Education Week / Teacher Magazine, Technology and Learning Magazine, and then the THE Learning, THE Journal, which is Technology and Higher Education Journal. All of them are all relevant resources, obviously, around what's going on in education. Some of them will have some free resources, some of them will have some that you're going to have to pay for. But like I said, and I hate to plug EdSurge more than the other ones, but I have found EdSurge to be an excellent resource. But all of them are good. There are other ones that I'm more than happy to share. Like I said, my contact details will be coming up. Feel free to email me, and I can share some more with you. Maybe there might be more specific around where in the education space you work.